back to the Vet S.O.S show, brought to you by the Who You Know Network. Remember, don't drown in the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline. Coughing on air here. This is great. Great start. Need to get ready for some more serious knowledge being dropped today. We got a great guest and Delaina Morse coming on to really share some great, interesting information with us. I'm really excited about this. As always, I got my partner Mark here. Mark, how you doing today?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here. And yeah, get ready for those knowledge bombs. We're going to drop those because Delaina's got some serious information to share with us.
That is awesome. And as always, we want to thank those people who have been pairing their channels with us. Please continue to pair your channels. Put the information out live on your social media. And if you have any questions about how to do that, please hit us up with #pairing, and we will tell you how to do it. It's very simple, and you get that original content out on your networks. So without further ado, Delaina was a military spouse for over 15 years. She's been helping veterans transition in the civilian sector for about 6, and became a passion when she saw how hard it was for those who got out during the drawdown. Delaina was able to help some veterans find jobs as a hiring manager, but it was not until she moved into recruiting that she was able to make a huge impact. Delaina has helped over 1,000 veterans with resume, interview, prep, and salary negotiation, including helping over 100 people find meaningful employment. Delaina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Great. Welcome.
Great. It's always great that we film on a Saturday and it airs on a Tuesday, so people probably look at what I'm wearing and all confused, but it's the third Saturday in October for recording, and that's a national holiday in my book. So got to celebrate. See how we do today.
Yeah.
So how did you were a military spouse, so you got to see a lot of these things. You probably experienced a lot of the problems. Our military spouse community, I know my wife has struggled finding employment, especially overseas. So you've probably seen things like that go on. You probably maybe experienced it as well. So how did that fuel your passion to get into this?
Honestly, it's there's a lot of relative experiences that military spouses have with transitioning veterans. For one, we have been filling out job applications and getting turned down for years. But there's a lot of things that come into play that are transferable as far as experiences go with being a military spouse and a transitioning veteran. You have all these skills, you have all this value, and got to figure out what to do with it.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I think is probably very important is the interview prep, because a lot of people, I think, they can get to the interview, but here's what we see outside of the veteran and military community, just in the civilian sector, is closing the deal, right? I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that people have just in general in interviewing and job seeking. It's closing that deal. Can you talk a little bit about how you kind of help prepare people for that negotiation, for that ask, all of those things?
So when it comes to interview prep and salary negotiations, I kind of separate those just a little bit. There's different stages. So in the pre-screen is typically where they ask you what are your salary expectations. With that, I help with guiding them to looking up, for one, the state. The location is going to be key. I mean, the pay in Chattanooga and the pay in San Diego are not the same for the same position. But looking up, do that market analysis. It only takes just like 5 minutes to look these things up. But you can look it up real quick with Glassdoor, with LinkedIn. They have a salary page. You can even ask. I mean, I have a friend who's a recruiter, at a company that I want to work for. And I said, hey, what's the salary range? So when I apply, I know what to say. Ask those questions, those informational interviews that you have with your fellow comrades who are out in the civilian sector. Those are great questions to ask them. So then that way you can have that information going into that pre-screen. When it comes to, I'm going to get to interview prep in just a second. for actual interviews. When it comes to salary negotiations, that's the big tripping point. You either have the veteran on one side that's like, they're giving me money, I'll take whatever you give me, and they don't realize that they should probably negotiate. And then you have the other ones who know that that's not the right amount. Like, they know they should ask for more, but they don't know how to do that. Like, they don't know the verbiage that goes into that, and the way that you say that. And there's a lot of times where I've seen, because I have them send me what they're going to send before sending it, so I could look at it, because it's a quick fix to kind of change some words around and plug it back at them, and that way they can copy and paste. But I see a lot of it where we're using our families, we're using situational things like, I'm getting out, or I've seen begging almost, hey, I really, please, pay me this. None of that. That's not what we do in salary negotiations. This is, you've been selected. So let me just point that out. If you've made it to that round, most likely they've already told everyone else no. So they're not going to want to go back just because you propose another amount and say, you know what, we're not going to give you the job. We're going to call J-Bo, who we told no to, and see if he still wants to work for us after we denied him. Like, it's not going to work that way. Put out that negotiation. Say, hey, here are the things that I bring to the table. This is the quality and value I bring to your company. Based on that, this is what I need to be able to be compensated fairly. And that throws it, that's fair. There's nothing, there's no argument, it's not an argument, it's not negative, it's not anything, it's facts. And when you're getting down to money, it should just be facts. Feelings should be left off to the side.
I'm going to cut you off before you get into the interview prep, but I've sat through 3 or 4 salary negotiation type classes here in the last 3 weeks through the different programs I'm in, and 100% spot on everything you just said. And I love it. Leave the feeling out of it, because it is a business negotiation at that point. And I think the other thing that, as veterans, that we don't think about is all the other things that can be negotiated as well. The salary may be fine. You may know it's a good salary, but there's so many other things you can talk about. And the one class I was in yesterday, they actually talked about how the negotiation piece actually helps you build a stronger relationship with your hiring manager. And so it was a fascinating way to look at it, and very excited to get into that part of it. Hopefully coming soon.
Well, and one thing that you said kind of stuck in my mind too and resonated with me, because we've said this in maybe a little bit different way, but like the negotiation, you getting to that negotiation means that they have picked you, right? And that's super important. It's just like, as we transition maybe into the interview prep, when you get to the interview, they've already said, yeah, this guy can do the job, or this gal can do the job, right? That's why they're interviewing you. That's why they're bringing you in, because they know your resume has told them that you can do the job. It's the interview is more, do we like this person, right? Or maybe just an independent verification of some of their skills. But that's really what it's about. That's really what the interview is about. So hopefully that's a good segue into the interview prep.
When it comes to interview prep, so as far as the validation of your skills, as far as your resume goes, that's the pre-screen or the TA interview. That's when you're interviewing with the recruiter. That's the whole purpose of that, is literally just to make sure that you still want to work there. There's not, you haven't accepted an offer somewhere and you're not interested anymore, but that you still want to work there. You're good with the benefits that they offer, the vacation, things like that. And then you get your salary expectations and make sure that the proof is in the pudding. So you've got the skills that your resume really says. and they'll ask you specific questions. I ask questions that are even geared off of my hiring managers. I always ask my hiring managers, is there a few questions that you would like me to ask at the end that are you feel are most relative, to try to weed out the people who you feel that you don't want to get through based upon qualifications. And I always add those in there. So if you've made it past the pre-screen, you're now in an interview. At that point, it's no longer the validation of skills. It's you competing against other candidates.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah,
where
absolutely.
the role changes.
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's how well you can not only fit into the culture of the company, and base your responses, look at the feel, read the room. That's the biggest thing. I mean, you guys are great at reading the room. How many times have you walked into a conference room and you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to have this sort of tone. Your tones have changed based upon the rank that's sitting there. The people who are interviewing you have a civilian version of rank. It's either a director or it's a manager of some type. You know how to adjust your tone to that. So I always tell people, think of it as if your gunny's dressing you down before you go talk to the E9, right? There's always that quick dress down. So you don't say something stupid. You don't exactly. Your uniform looks good. You know everything that's going to happen. You've already been debriefed because Gunny knows he doesn't want you to walk in there because he's going to get yelled at too. So it's that same sort of atmosphere, but you just don't have that E7 to say, hey, don't say this, do this, look like this. You have to do that on your own. And when you walk into that interview, you're basically competing against other candidates. And I want to make sure that I really kind of harp on that just a little bit, because a lot of people get that confused. They think that they're still trying to validate themselves when they go into an actual interview. And at that point, it's not how much you have met the job description. It's how you're going to fit best within their culture in comparison to the other candidates, and how well you're able to pick up on those, the differences and the changes of management, because you're still going from one job to the other. I mean, I've worked on systems called AS400. I've worked on it for one company and I've worked with it in another company, and it's two completely different setups because it's a system where you buy packages. So they're going to ask questions about that just to make sure that you have an understanding of what is actually, so to see, kind of gauge to see how much training they're going to have to give you, because that's time for the manager. They don't have specific training people. It's usually you're kind of thrown in, and, Bob off to the side, who does a similar job, is going to be tasked with showing you how to do stuff. So they're just trying to figure out how much you're leaning on poor Bob. But there's that. But it's the comparison to other candidates. So when you go in there, be confident. That's the big thing. Be confident. Like, you've got this. You've made it to the interview. They want to talk to you. So have that confidence in yourself, have that confidence in your skills and the value that you bring. You know that you're awesome, especially, if you've made it this far, I even have my sergeants. Were you meritoriously promoted? Yes. You're probably great then. So think about little things like that. Those are confidence boosters. So that way, when you walk in there, you feel more comfortable in yourself, more comfortable in your own skin, and you're less likely to be overly nervous. Like, a little bit of nervous is okay, but like that overly nervous, that's where you want to kind of gauge that back.
Yeah.
I know I threw a bunch of stuff out.
It's amazing though when you think about it. When you take a community, military community, a group of people that we train to be confident to do their job, how nervous they get with the idea of interviewing, because it's so foreign to us. And most of us have never had to do a resume, never had to interview before. You get promoted on your potential. You stay in long enough. Hopefully your skill and your potential and your leadership increases and you continue to move forward. But never once do we worry about actually, you may interview for a specific job within the military, but the resume piece, the interviewing piece, most of that just doesn't exist. So it is fascinating because even myself, you know, I consider myself, I'm fairly confident in my abilities. You know, the first interview I went to, I was like, oh, I haven't done this in 20 years. I don't even know what I'm doing. You know, so get you thinking and you're like, wait a minute, hold on a second. So I had to regather, regroup. But I love what you said. You know, you're probably very good. You know, you're probably, you know, possibly great. And you know that. You just got to transfer that over to the confidence level to what you're doing. So that's powerful. And I think that's the experience of an experienced recruiter talking, you know, on how to do it the right way.
Well, let's hear a little bit about that too, right? Because you are an experienced recruiter and you do work for a company with supply chain and have some great experience there. You can talk about a ton. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you're doing there?
Yeah, so I wanted to. My passion was to go into recruiting. I love, honestly, I love having conversations with veterans and helping them see. Like, my favorite moment is that aha moment that they have when you are going through a job description with them and you're helping them learn how to translate their skills, and then all of a sudden the job description that they thought they weren't qualified for, they now see, because I already knew, but they now see what you see, and they're like, oh my gosh, I should apply for this. I'm like, yeah, you should. So, absolutely. So those moments are amazing. Like, you could feel great the rest of your week for that. But I wanted to be able to do that more often and have a bigger impact. So when I transitioned into recruiting, I wanted to stay planted in some sort of way to where I could still have recs that affect veterans. So currently I'm managing both. So I do tech roles. So I'm a tech recruiter, but I'm doing manufacturing roles because I was like, I wanted those roles. So then that way I still have an in per se, and still have the recs coming across that plate. One thing I'm immensely passionate about is the E5 and below pop. They're the ones that really are completely different than any other veteran that is getting out, because any other veteran is retiring most of the time. So with these guys, a lot of the times they've got small children, kids in diapers, you know, they need food, they need health insurance. There's a lot of things that they need out of a company that a lot of other people, you know, I go with retirees into salary negotiations, and we're asking to see if they can compensate them more money instead of taking their health insurance, you know, taking the benefits that they're offering. You know, with that E5 and below pop, that's what they need. So I wanted to be in a position to where I could still offer roles to them with a company that offers benefits like that. So that way it's not just earning a paycheck to support their family. It's also having those benefits to support their family. And there's just a big difference. And so that's with recruiting now, I'm with Johnson & Johnson. I'm technically with Wilson HCG with an RPO, and then I support Johnson & Johnson. My roles right now, besides my digital ones, all my manufacturing roles are currently in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, and Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. They are mech tech, so maintenance technician. I've had quite a few, an electrical side too for system technician. Everyone. I can pretty much help just about any E5 and below get in, because at some point they've worked on something. So if you've worked on, you know, any sort of MRAPs, if you've worked on a plane, if you've worked on generators for GSE, any of that, I can get into those roles, and they pay very well and have very good benefits.
See, all that complaining about Motor Pool Monday, it's going to pay off in the end.
I just dropped another bomb because I think that that's super important. And I think that, look, our show, we've had a lot of people on, and you know, a lot of the focus, I think, is for, like you said, people that are retiring, they've done their 20, 30, right? And they're getting out, but they've got these things in place. They've got health insurance through TRICARE. They've got, or or whatever the benefits are that they're getting. They've got their pension, and that paycheck is coming in. So they've got buffer, they've got runway. But like you said, E5 and below, man, that runway is like this, right?
Yeah.
To get landed. And that's a huge
And in reality, they don't have always a year out either.
Right.
They don't have the prep time. They don't have, you know what, I think next year I'll drop papers. Like there's none of that. There's like, oh, I didn't get selected, so I'm getting out, and that's it. So, and a lot of them are hoping on a prayer that they get selected for that E6 so they can move up even further, or get selected for the E5 so that way they're not higher tenure. That's the reality. So there's not always that buffer time.
Yeah, that's a very true point. Grunts off the ground. Sounds like a fantastic concept. Tell us a little bit about it.
So when I went into supply chain logistics years ago, I noticed there weren't a lot of veterans, and that kind of bothered me. So when I started helping the groundside Marines, because my husband was Marine Corps. So when I started helping them, I noticed that they were so stuck on only being a cop and a security guard. I'm like, no, you can do so much more than that. I'm like, did you manage gear? And they're like, yeah. I was like, did you do inventory? Yeah. I was like, did you get help with the setup for the customs forms and things like that when it came to the shipment of your gear for deployment? And they're like, yeah. And I'm just like, yeah. So, so I was showing them, they had no idea. They had no idea that these jobs were even out there, that they could qualify, because the military for so long had said that all those skills are soft skills. And those are not the real skills in the civilian sector. So I'm so excited for you that you were able to shoot expert. However, all the other stuff that you do during the day actually has everything to do with jobs that are in the civilian sector. So I started focusing in on and creating the initiative or the talk around groundside Marines and groundside soldiers or Army. So then that way they can start finding other places. They can find new homes. They can find careers. The transportation industry, supply chain industry, these are careers. These aren't just jobs. And they have huge benefits, and it's work. I know I work with Ken Killingsworth, and he's huge on getting that E5 and below pop over to Watco to learn railroad, and that's a big industry, especially with the shortage drivers. They have to transport their goods away, so rail has really spiked in the last couple of years. So it's an industry to get into. They already have everything, and there's been a lot of change within that. It's been a lot of culture change, which was my ultimate goal, is to have that culture change both in the civilian sector and the mindset of those groundside Marines and groundside soldiers.
That's absolutely amazing. And I think that's a huge game changer. Can really help some people find some meaningful careers and things like that post-military. And I applaud you for your efforts on that. And hopefully you can continue to build upon that. We're coming down to the end. I got your LinkedIn scrolling across the bottom so people can follow you, reach out to you, maybe, find out more about the grunts off the ground, or even, maybe some tips on, the resume or the interview process. We got a lot of things out there to help people with that. As we get ready to close, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with?
I accept all connection requests from veterans and military spouses. And yes, I mean, send a message, whatever, but I'm going to accept your request. Everyone deserves to be looked at. Everyone deserves a chance. In my book, I don't care if you got out as an E3 and you got a DUI, you got in trouble, whatever. I don't care about any of that. Did you get out and learn your lesson? Great. Let's find you a job.
Yeah. Outstanding.
100%.
I'm gonna make sure my wife reaches out, and that's, I looked at your profile during the interview. It's the Pine Forest connection that I remember.
That's what it was.
Yep. My wife went to Pine Forest, I believe, and graduated. So there's a
wow.
connection there. Make use of all of it.
All about who you know.
Yep, exactly. Delaina, thank you so much for coming on. Great information to help our population. Absolutely love it. Want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Vet S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't drown in the sea of transition. Grab the Vet S.O.S lifeline.